We want to make education child-centered today, which means they work on their own, they're taught that things are important because they think they're important. We're sort of trying to place them at the center of their own universe. But the truth is, they aren't the center of the universe. They are the most excellent visible thing in the universe among living things, and they have enormous potential. But what they're to know is the activity. And so it's actually true that they must give themselves to learn. They must think that this object is worthy to know, and to know is to serve it. And they must discipline themselves to that. And that has to come from inside them, but the that they're studying is not inside them. And so that's why by being child-centric, we're actually stunting our children. Welcome to this introduction to K-12 education. My name is Larry Arnn, and I'm the president of Hillsdale College, and I'm in the education business. Hillsdale College is an institution of higher education. It's 171 years old. It has an old mission that I'm going to speak about a little bit in a minute. And it's a difficult college, and it's an advanced college. It's one of the best in the country. And so you may wonder why I'm talking to you about K-12 education. There's a couple of reasons for that. One of them is higher education is the way you get qualified to teach K-12 education. You need to know more than the students, and you need to know higher things than the students can know when they're young. And so we have always trained teachers here since 1844. We're one of the few colleges to have women and men students, also black and white, from the first day of operating. That's a guarantee in our charter, and we may be the first institution in history to make that guarantee in its founding charter. And back in the day, you had to know both Latin and Greek to get into Hillsdale College back in the day. Those are still among the most studied languages at the college. And the women students in particular became school teachers, and they would be the teachers of their families and of the region. And that established them as sources of wisdom and authority in the region, and learning spread through them and many others like them, of course. A second reason is education is a very fundamental thing. It's written in the nature of people. That word nature is interesting. We have the word natural rights, and nature starts with the Latin word for birth. It comes from the Latin word for birth. And it means the process of begetting and growth by which a living thing comes to be. Human rearing and the biological way they come to be and grow up is complicated, more than most creatures. In my family, we have, I like to say this, I often do, we have dogs, and we study them all the time. And it takes about a year and a half to raise a dog to the place where we raise them. I won't say that they're particularly obedient dogs, but they're delightful dogs, and they grow up fast. Human children, on the other hand, take a very long time. Our eldest child is 30. I might mention her in a little bit because she's doing something related to K-12 education. And I'm still very much her father, and her mother is still very much our mother, and we are close. And, she's mature now and very capable person, and all of our children are. And on the other hand, that took a long time. Marriage and the family are implied in that fact, and a kind of education is implied in that fact, because when you raise up a child, you get more than you get when you raise up a dog. Human beings are capable of being causes in nature, say the classic philosophers. They can choose. Dogs are ruled by instinct and training, and they do what instinct tells them to do, and they do what we tell them to do, in our case, in our house, at least some of the time. But human human beings, they make their own decisions. And decisions are made in light of ends. What are you aiming for? And ends are chosen amidst pressures and circumstances that get in the way. And so most of the things we do are compromises, and those compromises are judged by whether they're good service to the end or not. And that's latent in every human being, every human child, and human children come into the ability to do that very young. So it matters so very much how they're taught. The word education itself comes from a Latin word that means to lead forth. And if you think about that term for a minute, forth, you'll see that it's kind of a value term. It means, like the Bible says, raise up a child in the way they should go. Think of a horse. Horses are excellent creatures at movement. They run beautifully, powerfully, carry a lot when they go. But if you ever saw a horse backing up, fancy horses are trained to do that, it doesn't look very good. They're not going forth. They're not made to go that way. When they start the other way, everything is fluid and often very lovely. So forth means something about how they ought to do, how they ought to be. You should be interested in education if you're a teacher. I expect a lot of teachers will watch this course. If you have children, or if you're interested in the way human beings are, or if you're interested in the great public policy issue of education. It's one of the biggest issues in the country. Enormous amounts of money are spent on it. Most of state budgets, last time I looked, the average was 55% of the money in a state is deployed in K through 12 education. And so it's a very big thing, and today it's governed the way very big things are. I should say in America it's always been a very big thing, always regarded as a fundamental thing. And now it's done differently. It's not more important than it used to be. Actually, I'll stop and illustrate that for a minute. Back when we used to care more about the origins of the country than we do now, when I don't include me and Hillsdale College, and likely not you when I say when we used to. We used to know, though, that there were 4 organic laws in the United States history, and they used to be listed in the beginning of the United States Code, the code of all the laws of the United States. And the first one was the Declaration of Independence, and the second one was the Articles of Confederation, and the third one was the Northwest Ordinance, and the fourth one was the Constitution of the United States. And the Northwest Ordinance was passed written and passed in the summer of 1787 in Philadelphia, where nearby the Constitutional Convention was meeting. And the Northwest Ordinance provides the way that the government of the United States would grow, because we owned the Northwest Territory. I'm standing in it right now in Hillsdale, Michigan, a very large area of land. And the idea was we're going to make that part of the United States, and how shall we do that? And the idea that we hit upon was that these places would never be colonies. They would never be ruled by us against their consent. They would be part of the governing system as soon as there were enough of them to form some kind of government. And then when that government had some experience and got a bit bigger, and the colony, the state, the territory it was called, got more organized, then it could petition the Congress with a constitution, and it could be admitted to the Union just like every state that was part of the original 13. And the Northwest Ordinance had to decide what to do with the land, because the land, which had been ceded from Virginia to the central government, was mostly owned by the government. And their idea was we need to get that land into private hands. And the Land Ordinance of 1787, a kind of partner, they were developing the Northwest Ordinance at the same time, it allowed that the land would be divided into townships and sections, and it would be sold off to pay the Revolutionary War debt. And so they would get the land into private hands as quick as they could. Shows the disposition of government back then. They thought it was good for people to own property, and they thought it was good for the country if they owned property. The Homestead Act that I've mentioned in a previous course is another example of that. And by the time of the Homestead Act in 1862, the Revolutionary War debts had been long paid, and so they gave the land away. Well, in selling off all this land in the Northwest Ordinance, they just kept one reservation, and that is the 16th section of each township in the Hillsdale Township. It's that way from where I'm standing right now. I looked it up one time to see where it was. That was given to the states. It was the only thing reserved for public use. All across the country, this practice was extended and also expanded. Eventually, they were giving 4 sections. And the states got the land free of charge on condition that they would use the value of the land to support education in that township. And so education was given this massive gift. In the far west of the United States, it was given, 4/32, 1/8 of the land area of the United States was reserved for education as an endowment to states which had complete control of it. And what that means is that in financial terms in America, we can't really give a gift as big as that to education as the one the founders gave. And notice the constitutional way that it was given. The federal government would not administer it. The federal government would not control it. Today what we do is we set national standards and we have national criteria for examinations, and every classroom, we're on a course to try to standardize every classroom in America. So that was a very different attitude to education, and yet it had a very, very high priority, at least as high as it has today. And in the Northwest Ordinance, in Article 3, it says the purpose of all that. The Article 3 of the Northwest Ordinance begins with one of the prettiest things in all of the documents of America, and it states the purpose of the schools. It says, religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind. And if you look in the Declaration of Independence, the purposes that are stated are, good government that protects our rights, and safety and happiness. And so the purposes of the American regime are those two things. And the Northwest Ordinance says you can't have those things without religion, morality, and knowledge, which are necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind. And therefore, it says, schools and the means of education shall ever be encouraged. And that's part of the organic laws of the United States of America. And that constitutional way of proceeding is also changed very much, of course, because now we think it's got to be done the same way. Parents and teachers and schools and districts and states, and I'm going, I just took a series of steps, each step farther away from the child who's learning. It's thought that they are not able to do it properly, and that there has to be a big department in Washington, D.C. that sets national standards. And that's a very big thing in America, that idea came to be. And it's a questionable idea, of course, because at Hillsdale College we understand, because we're in the teaching business, we understand that education is mainly an effort of the child. Our students here, when I first came here and became a teacher, I learned something profound, and that was if you tried to do too much of the work for them, you could only succeed in making them bored. If you're a college teacher, as I am, and there are many really great ones here, you've spent years learning things. and those things were a struggle for you, and you grappled with them, and you put one thing together, and it's like you've got this huge jigsaw puzzle going on in your soul, and you put the pieces to place, and you know the satisfaction when they come into place and they start forming some kind of a picture. And that takes years and years and years and years. Most of the people who teach at Hillsdale College, all of the people who teach at Hillsdale College, have at least 10 years of higher education. And they were very good at school and high school, too, as a rule. They're used to being among the smartest people they know. And they've got this turn of mind that they want to build, and soul, that they want to build up this picture out of this jigsaw puzzle. And it's very advanced in them. And so if they just come and explain all their conclusions in the classroom, it makes the students yawn. I have a significant memory teaching a class, very bright girl, daughter of a general who's a friend of mine, one of the top students in her class. And I was telling her one of the most beautiful things I know, telling the class that, and she yawned, and it was devastating to me. And I went home, and my wife said, how was class? I said, it was terrible. And she said, why was it terrible? And I said, well, I take the most beautiful things I know, and I render them into boredom. And she said to me, you have to learn how not to do that. And I fancy that I have learned. I always ask them first. Make it their problem. And then whatever they say, ask somebody if they agree with it. Or disagree with it yourself, even if it's right in your opinion. It's always important to get a discussion going. Get them to grapple. And then when the knowledge comes, they're going through the same process you went through. And that means that they are agents unto themselves, just like I said at the beginning, the difference between human beings and dogs. And so you have to treat them that way in the school. That actually means you have to know them to be helpful to them. You even have to love them. And you have to love the thing that you're teaching. And so the old idea about all government in America was that it should be driven by the people mainly who are doing the work. And now the idea is there are national standards. If we just get them right and do the right examinations, then we can compete with China, which is the great thing now. We have to compete with the rest of the world. And the truth of the matter is, in those older times, when we did it a different way, we were the marvel of the rest of the world. And China itself, in my opinion, has become serious competition to the United States of America, chiefly because they abandoned their ways of central control and picked some new ones. So education is a big public policy issue, very important. It commands a lot of money, and it's done bureaucratically. These lectures are not going to be about that, and I'm going to shut up about that. These lectures are going to be about what do you need to learn and how do you learn it. We argue here at the college that because of this human situation that we're in, that is to say, we are not quite like the animals. In so many ways we are like them. We have to eat, we get old, we die, we have people we love. Our way of coming to be is complicated and takes years of sacrifice by other people, our parents. And then we have to choose, just like dogs have to choose. One of our dogs has a bad leg. He hurt himself, and it hurts him sometime. And of course, we're doing things to treat him that my father would never have done for a dog, would have done for a child, of course. He feels those pains, but he keeps his nature great, and he's a happy dog, and we're going to get it fixed, I think. So we're like the dog in that regard. We want things. If we don't have them, we suffer. Things can hurt us. We have desires. We want lots of things that are pleasant to have and honorable to have and make one proud to have. But then there's something, and dogs have all that too. But there's something about us, see, that's different, and that is, it matters to us how we get these things. And so we will commit ourselves to action, to do a thing, and we're deciding to do it. And we can make that heavy commitment. We can say, I'm going to do this thing, and maybe imagine it's a complicated thing, it's a risky thing, it's a complex thing. And much depends on the thing. We all make choices like that all the time. I was saying to some of our graduate students in a class I'm teaching right now, I said, you know, I'm trying to give them an example of the kind of choices that Winston Churchill made. And I said, well, didn't you make a big choice? You're all sitting in this room. You've committed to this. You've risked a lot for it. You could be doing something else. Do you ever wonder if you'd made the right choice? Not just, is it going to work out, but is it the best thing for you to be doing? Of course, statesmen make those choices on a huge scale involving life or death for very many people. Churchill for millions of people. But every human choice is like that. And we have a conscience about these choices. We wonder if we did the right thing. Something outside us is judging what we do, and that is the mark of the fact that we are ends unto ourselves. And that's why our education is so important, because it forms us in powerful ways. And remember, I said it forms us, but unlike training a dog, much more than training a dog, because dogs are not simply tools, much more than training a dog, and profoundly and decisively in us, each one of us, is involved in the shaping. Students can't learn unless they want to, and they have to work hard. We like to say about admissions to the college, we're lucky enough to have a choice of who we allow to come here. And I'm sorry for the ones who can't, and some of them are very good. But what we're looking for is just two things. We're looking for ability. Can they do this kind of work? It's pretty hard. And more than that, actually, we're looking for willingness, because we have come to understand that they do the work. And I understand the Constitution of the United States much better because I came to understand that about students. It was my own education is very greatly advanced by teaching. Things that I've studied for 40 years, there are some of them now. I've been teaching here at Hillsdale College for 15 years now. And I know them better because of that. So I should mention, I'm going to talk about it in a little bit of detail in the concluding lecture to this series, but I should mention that Hillsdale College is heavy into the K through 12 education business. We have a Hillsdale Academy, a private school that's 3 blocks from where I'm standing right now, and it's over 20 years old, and it's a very excellent school by even by the standards of testing that we have today. We don't pay any attention to those tests. We don't cram for them, and we don't adjust our curriculum to cope with them. But for some good reason, which is sometimes mysterious to us, our kids do excellently on those things. On the SAT and the ACT, those college prep examinations, college admissions examinations. On the AP courses, advanced placement courses that they teach, we don't teach them at the Academy. We like to think that everybody's taking advanced placement courses all the time. And we do very well on all of those things, and on the state test that Michigan has when we take them. I don't think we have to take them all, and we don't take them all, but when we take them, we do very well. Also, we've been starting these charter schools, and we have 8 of them now, and we're going to open somewhere between 2 and 5. I think just today, as I'm speaking, the number is 5 next August. And they've got several thousand students in them now. The oldest of them is 3 years old. And they've been doing well. They're scattered around various states, and I'll just mention, lest you think that I've decided the college should start taking money from the government. Our arrangement of these schools is exactly parallel to the arrangement that the federal government, it's a little more close than that, I guess, made with schools in the Northwest Ordinance. That is to say, We don't take any money from these schools. No money ever comes from them, not a nickel, to us. So whatever we do for them, we pay for it. And what we do for them is we provide a curriculum, and we train their teachers, and we accredit them according to 10 points. I'll mention some of them at the conclusion. And we have teacher conferences here on the campus. Many dozens, soon many hundreds come to that. And for 2 weeks, we help them be better teachers. And we give them a lot of advice, and they give us a lot of advice. And I said, teaching and learning are actually a common task. They go together. In a good classroom, everybody learns, including the teacher. So we learn a lot from all these charter schools that we've got, and they're doing very well. And if you look at it from their point of view, once in a while we give them some money, not a lot and not very often. It's some special need or something we are particularly interested in. But our advice costs them money if they follow it. Some of the things that we ask them to do are harder than other things. And so they're volunteers. They're spending money. And we're spending money. And we're both spending our own money. And it's a partnership. So I'm going to conclude with this for now, and then I'll cover some other stuff in the concluding lecture. You're about to hear about how certain things are taught. And you're going to learn that the things that are taught in school, there's a finite number of them. There's a finite number of kinds of things to know. And those things, by the way, are written in the nature of the human being and in nature. You know that old summary, reading and writing and arithmetic? That's almost comprehensive. That's almost all of the ways of knowing that we can have and the kinds of things we can know about. You have to add in the natural sciences, which is related to arithmetic. And so we believe at basic education and in higher education, those are the subjects. And we also believe that that the ways of learning those things have not changed very much and cannot change very much. The amount to know about the natural sciences is much greater than it used to be, in a way. And in another way, the amount to know about all of the disciplines cannot expand because it's always been, practically speaking, infinite. And so you want to get a grasp of these high things. And next time, actually I'll do it right now and I'll get it out of the way and then I'll start with it again next time. There's actually another way to divide knowledge. Knowledge and education are divided into the kinds of things you're trying to learn, but they're also divided into the hierarchy in which they fit. And that hierarchy is actually easy to see. Some things are higher than others. In our own lives, we treat some things as higher than others. We get this point wrong a lot, and yet it's so basic. Would you rather your kid be good or rich? You'd want both, but if you had to pick, would you rather your kid be a prosperous thief or a poor, honest person? Everything we make shows this. The first book, the first page of Aristotle's Ethics makes this point. He says, anytime you make anything, anytime art is involved, you can see a hierarchy in it. The example he uses is a bridle. He says, a bridle maker makes bridles for horses, he means. And he says, the making of the bridle is inferior to the bridle because you wouldn't do it if you didn't want the bridle. But the bridle is useless by itself. It's for riding horses. So horsemanship is above bridle making and above bridles. Bridle making, bridles, horsemanship. But horsemanship is for something. Especially, he says, it's for cavalry. That is to say, you got to win your wars. And cavalry is for victory in war. And when you get to victory in war, you get to something high. Because you need that very much. Do the same thing with the bottle. Bottle making is for the bottle is for drinking, drinking is for health. When you get to health, you need your health. If you don't have it, your life is compromised. So you got victory, and you got health, and you got intelligence, and you got good fortune, and you got all kinds of things that are very high goods, and you need them. And they're good for their own sake. And yet when you make a list like that, what you can see is you could have all of those things. There are examples in the paper every day of somebody who's rich and good looking and smart and miserable. Because people can be like that, right? Those goods are not enough. Although you need them, they're high, they're not ultimate. And so then the question arises, what is the thing you need to add to those very high goods that makes your life complete? And whatever that thing is, that is the subject matter of the ultimate things. That is the subject matter of liberal education. And the liberally educated soul is marked by the fact that it has a grasp of the highest things and has taught itself, with the help of others, to live in light of them. And of course, everybody wants that for themselves and for their loved ones, especially their children. So next time I'll tell you a little bit about our charter schools and how they work, how they function. You're going to hear a lot about that in the subsequent lectures. And then also I will try to tell you a little bit about what are the components you have to learn in basic education to lead to this higher education. Thank you.